Yeah,
And
yeah.
so how is the tour going so far?
Yeah,
And
yeah. It's almost at the end now, and it's couldn't ask for better, really.
mhm,
Um, it's not an easy time for any tour, I think,
mhm.
going out in the States at the moment. But this tour has done better than expected. Uh, can't complain. You know, the lineup is diverse enough that there's something for everybody. You
Mhm.
know, so I think that helps.
Yeah, it's a really unique sort of lineup because the bands on the tour seem so different from each other,
Yeah,
and yet they
sure,
work really well.
sure.
Yeah. Have
That's
there,
a hard balance to
it
strike,
is. Yeah, a
actually.
lot of times with like grind shows, you'll get 4 or 5 or 6
Exactly.
grind bands, and you're
And the
like,
thing is, the people that come to these shows, they're going to be standing there for 5, 6 hours.
mhm,
Like, do you really want to see kind of a small variation on the same theme
right,
6 times over? I personally wouldn't,
right.
but that's just me. You know.
Yeah. So I just want to talk about the new record. I love it. I've been a fan of the band for a very long time, and it feels really cultivated and very creative, but it still sounds like Napalm Death.
Organic, yeah.
Yeah, and I was just wondering, did you guys do anything differently in the songwriting process to try and diversify it at
No, no.
all? Or?
I mean, the songwriting's always been the same, pretty much. In the mechanics of it. It's just we have a certain chemistry between the four of us, which you would expect after 20 something years.
Mhm.
But it's a chemistry that also seems to go into to move things along a little bit when
Mhm.
it needs to be.
Mhm.
And it's not a massive effort for us to do that actually. It comes quite naturally. Um, so yeah, it just kind of always works out in the end somehow. So.
Right. And is that chemistry that you guys have together the reason why Napalm Death records have been so consistent? Like they all stand alone, but it consistently sounds like Napalm Death.
Sure, I mean, you know, when you work with people, you get to know things that they use, you know, the tools that they use coming
Mhm.
from themselves, and you can adapt to those tools. You
Mhm.
can also it also works the other way around, you know, from person to person.
Right.
So yeah, it's just almost an unspoken connection or something. If
Right.
that's the right phrase.
Yeah, I sort of intuit what the other members are gonna do,
Yeah,
and then you can
yeah. I
write
mean,
around it.
we're not a band that has like a checklist of things like
Mhm.
criteria that we have to have for an album because that would be like too robotic.
Right.
It is a very natural process, you know, very fluid. So.
Right. And for you guys have been around for so long. Do you, when you're writing, do you consciously sort of go, okay, we want to sound a little bit different than the last record, or does it just happen that way
It just
organically?
happens that way, to be honest with you. I mean, one of the factors that maybe brought this album like further along is the fact that we recorded it over a year
Mhm.
and not just in 3 weeks like we
Right.
normally do. So when you have several sessions of songs, inevitably, if you finish the session and you come back to it, say 2, 3 months later, you're always going to start at a different ambience.
Mhm.
That's science, basically. You
Right.
know.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, you know.
When you record an album for that length of time, like over the course of the year, is it hard to keep it interesting? Like if you were to just get it all done in 3 weeks, or do you take a break and to make sure the songs still
Well,
feel good?
for us, I can only speak for Napalm. It wasn't a problem for us
Mhm.
because I was writing all the time, you know,
Mhm.
in between sessions and during sessions as well. And yeah, for me, it always had that spark because you've also got to remember this: um, songs don't take on the full life until they're recorded.
Mhm.
At least in my experience,
Mhm.
you can have some songs that feel like they've got real promise, and
Mhm.
you want them to be on the album.
Mhm.
But then once they're recorded, that's when you truly get it. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? That even for the band, it just clicks. You know, it's
Right.
like, oh right, there you go. That's what it was.
Right. And so Napalm Death is probably one of the more outspoken bands on a lot of different social issues, global issues, and things like that. And I've always been kind of curious if your intention behind, pointing out things that are going on in the world is to maybe either try to change people's minds about certain ways of life and things like that, or are you just saying what you see?
The way we do it is we try not to hit people with a stick, you know.
Right.
Like to really aggressively say, this is what you should think, this is what you should think. Because that's kind of the antithesis of what it's all about.
Right.
The idea is to, I think some of the things that we speak about are so heinous, you know, in a lot of ways that it's obvious what a human response would be.
Right.
So it's a matter of putting it out there on the table and saying, look, this is what we know to be true, you know. So you may not know this, or you may not have come across this. So there it is. Take it away. Do what you need to do with it. You know, process it. It's that old dilemma. You can either do something or you can do nothing.
Right.
You know, that's the two basic choices that you have. And I would rather do something
than nothing.
You
know,
know,
for sure.
exactly, because every small contribution is exactly that. It's a contribution. You know, to ultimately, you know, a more egalitarian world of dignity where everybody can live with dignity, not just a few people.
Right.
You know? So
for
that's the point, really. So for me, it's a never-ending struggle. Not to over-dramatise it, but that's effectively what it is. You know.
Yeah, for sure. Do you find that audiences in different parts of the world respond differently to those messages?
Well, I mean, some people, despite what we've just talked about, some people just want to enjoy the music. And you know what? I don't have a problem with that. I really don't.
And so as Napalm Death moves, I think it's the band, or at least the name's been around for more than 30 years now, you know. Do you guys ever think about, you know, legacy and things that you've done over the decades?
I really don't, you know, because here's the thing, it's already there. People always say lots of very, very nice things about Napalm Death. Pioneering bands, influential, etc. And don't get me wrong, that's really nice. But you can become complacent because you're really only as good as your next album or your next gig.
Right.
You know, there are bands that kind of rested on their laurels in the same kind of way, and their stuff that they put out after that was just never the same again.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
That's what we'll do. I never think about the legacy because, to be honest, that's kind of other people's business. How they remember Napalm Death when Napalm Death's gone. It's not for me to kind of dictate that. You know,
Right.
it's for other people to view it how they would view it. You know?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it keeps the music sounding hungry, which is good, you know, especially for the genre.
Well, there's never going to be a lack of hunger because some of the, you know, the tandem things of music and lyrics in Napalm are very powerful, I think.
I think
know?
so too, yeah.
And so the hunger is kind of, it's there, it's a given, you know, so it would have to be, otherwise it would be probably a lot less effective.